Hello everyone, and welcome to this Wing Strikes 101 masterclass, where we go through the Wing Strikes mechanic at its core and explain basically the small niche interactions that make this function as a build archetype. If you're more interested about a guide for Wing Strikes, I recommend going over to our Wing Strikes endgame guide written by Snail over at Maxroll. I will have a link to it in the description below. It's an excellent guide. Just follow it and you're going to do amazing with this build archetype. But first, what is Wing Strikes even? Wing Strikes is something that happens when you are in Arbiter Form. So when I enter my Arbiter Form, I zap around me, dealing damage in the impact zones that it generates. But how do you even get Arbiter Form, you might ask? Arbiter Form comes from two sources. It's from the Disciple Oath, which means that casting a Disciple skill with a cooldown grants you Arbiter Form for 4.5 seconds. So for instance, if I use Divine Lance, which is the Disciple skill, I'm not going to get that because it's not a cooldown skill. The other way of getting this Arbiter Form is using the Ultimate Arbiter of Justice that will give you a much longer lasting effect that is very easy to manage. The duration of your Arbiter Form can be seen down by your resource bar. It's this blue little globe that fills up and then gradually is depleted. So by using multiple skills, you can see that it goes up and down, and it's not too bad to track, but it can be quite difficult to keep looking down during combat and quite easy to miss. Do note that the durations do not stack on top of each other. So if I'm casting multiple skills here with a cooldown, I'm not getting a 12-second Arbiter Form. I'm getting a 4.5-second Arbiter Form for every cooldown that I have, and then a much longer one from Arbiter of Justice. So optimally, you want to wait until your Arbiter Form is just about to run out, and then you cast another one, etc. However, something that you can do in order to make your Arbiter Form longer is using the Utility Temper that increases your Arbiter duration. One piece, if you have a GA and Masterwork crit, is 101.2% longer, and this is actually not capped. If I have 101.2% duration on my boots right now, you can see that my ult would last for 40 seconds. If I equip a pair of pants with Arbiter duration, this is now 48 seconds, meaning you can have more than 100% total duration on your Arbiter form. This makes the shorter duration buffs also much longer, making it way easier to maintain 100% uptime on Arbiter Form. Maintaining your Arbiter Form is basically the whole playstyle around Wing Strikes, because you want to make sure that you're staying in Arbiter Forms to even get access to this damage type. Speaking of the damage type, Wing Strikes is only holy damage, and you can add a Disciple tag to it with the Disciple's Oath. It is not mandatory to play Disciple's Oath if you want to play this build, but it will become much clunkier, so we do recommend it. Even though Arbiter of Justice is an ultimate skill, unfortunately this doesn't apply to the Wing Strikes themselves. So that means that anything that is tagged ultimate skills, like Apogeic Furor, is not going to help your Wing Strike damage at all. Baseline, your Wing Strikes happens every 2 seconds, but it comes in salvos of 3 hits. So if I'm using my Falling Star here, I do 3 hits, then it takes a little while, and I do another 3 hits. That is reduced if you put a point in the Enhanced Arbiter of Justice, which reduces the Wing Strike's recast time by 0.5 seconds. So if I press this and then I use it again, you can see that the zaps happen a little bit more earlier. The key passive, Exaltation, basically just flat gives you more damage in your Arbiter form, and it gives you one more Wing Strike. So if I'm using Falling Star here again, you're going to see that I'm now hit 4 times per salvo instead of 3 times. This is good for multiple builds, even builds like Judgment, where the extra Wing Strikes would apply another Judgment, and you could do even more damage that way. But for Wing Strikes, it basically just means you increase the number of hits you're doing by 33%, and it's not bad. While you're in Arbiter form, you have an empowered Evade. This Evade can actually go through walls, making it extremely powerful when traversing the map. You can also reduce the cooldown of your Arbiter's Evade by having the mobility aspect called Arbiter Zephyr. It gives your Arbiter's Evade a flat cooldown reduction of up to 3 seconds. If you want to evade as much as possible, you also want to have attacks reduce Evade's cooldown by 1.5 seconds. It makes it virtually have no cooldown. This tech is something that you use when you're playing with Argent Veil in order to basically spam out core skills. One of the early misunderstandings regarding wing strikes was that the Arbiter deals double damage affix didn't work because people didn't see a damage increase. If I'm using Falling Star here, you can see I'm doing 205 damage with my wing strikes. If I'm swapping to a blade, which has basically the same stats, it's one strength difference, and I cast it again, you can see that the first salvo I did 206, but the next one I did 412. And if we use an ultimate which lasts much longer, and we see this, the first salvo didn't double damage, the second one didn't, but then you can see that all of my other hits are now dealing double damage. This is because of a bug. This bug makes if you are dealing double damage on any wing strikes or the initial hit of the ultimate, all of the wing strike damage will be double damage. So if you're playing a wing strikes build, you don't actually care too much about the value on the chance for Arbiter to deal double damage because it's going to happen very early anyway. So if you have something like this unique amulet, you don't actually care too much about the double damage affix. You care much more about the passive, the Giant Slayer instead. Another misunderstanding tends to be that you deal more damage if you have Arbiter of Justice on the bar compared to if you don't. If we just use Falling Star here, without any double damage, you see I had to do 874 damage. If I remove Arbiter of Justice from my bar and cast it again, I'm going to do 874 damage again. So I don't actually deal more damage having Arbiter of Justice on the bar, but it will be easier to maintain it. Instead of me juggling a bunch of different disciple skills, I could just have Arbiter of Justice and not care too much anymore. Wing Strikes has no attack speed scaling, which makes it a little bit weird to use for this build archetype. It's not bad because it makes stuff like Falling Star much quicker, and having a shorter animation time on that makes it easier to not only traverse the map, but also to just maintain the buff overall. Wing Strikes can't lucky hit, unfortunately, which makes it a little bit clunky with Griswold's Opus, which means you need to have another damage source that can lucky hit in order to refresh these stacks, because it's kind of awkward to have them fall off and then you reapply them and then they fall off again. There are a bunch of different aspects that speaks to this build archetype, and most of them are quite intuitive. For instance, this aspect is called Turiel's Jurisdiction. It makes the wing strikes seek nearby enemies. So if I use Falling Star here, you can see that I'm now hitting the closest enemy all the time. This is quite nice, as when you are running around, it will just keep on seeking the targets all the time so you don't actually miss any damage. The aspect called Ascension is actually a very important one to understand just exactly how the Arbiter Form works. Basically, you have to cast a skill that grants you Arbiter Form in order to get a ramping damage buff. So if I put this on and I cast my Arbiter of Justice, you can see this icon here that basically means I have one stack of this. If I let this run out, I will lose all of these stacks, but as long as I keep refreshing it, I'm going to keep on building stacks. So here, by casting Falling Stars, I am getting more and more and more stacks. The problem though, if you don't manage these correctly, you can run out of Arbiter Form without anything to press and you will lose all the stacks. In the end game, you want to have some sort of build setup where you have a very long duration Arbiter of Justice or a lot of cooldown reductions so that you can just cast this on cooldown and never really risk losing these stacks. Another aspect that people tend to use for Wing Strike builds is the Celestial Strife one. This basically gives you a ramping vulnerable damage buff, so you just want to make sure that you kill a bunch of enemies in your Arbiter and then never lose your Arbiter form so these don't reset. The Disciple Oath also states that Wing Strikes gain Disciple skill benefits, which basically means if you have anything that increases your Disciple skills damage done, then this would also affect the Wing Strikes. But sadly, there aren't really that many things that speaks to Disciple skills right now. We have a decent damage aspect, a little bit of faith generation, and we have that Disciple skills now weaken enemies. I guess this one is the better option of the three, but it's kind of rough to slot into builds anyway. So you basically just get the damage from having, say, disciple damage stats on your gear or something. Judgment of Ariel is an amulet that looks really cool on paper, but just falls short right now. This basically gives you extra damage and defense for every rank you have in your Arbiter of Justice, and it gives you all of the skill upgrades at once. So you get the Divine Intervention, the Reach of the Law, and Seraph's Wings. In a Wing Strikes build, you don't really care too much about the first two, so you don't really get that much value out of it, but I'm sure there's some build that this could be fun in the future. Most of the wing strike builds just uses this one, as it gives you 400% increased damage to your wing strikes, which is absolutely insane. Do remember that you don't want to masterwork the chance for Arbiter to deal double damage due to the bug we have right now. If that is changed, I will just put a comment down below and make sure that everyone knows that this has been fixed. When it comes to offensive tempers for this build, you have multiple choices, but the most common ones are damage while in Arbiter Form, because that increases damage of everything that you do while you are in Arbiter Form. If you're only scaling on Wing Strike's damage, which is very common in a Wing Strike's build, you would go for the Wing Strike damage instead. This is just normal additive damage, it's not some weird separate multiplier, so if more or less 100% of your damage is Wing Strike, then just go for the Wing Strike damage temper. You have now learned all of the basics that you need to know in order to understand a Wing Strikes build guide. Just head over to the Wing Strikes endgame guide over at Maxroll, written by Snail. It's an excellent guide, and he goes through all of the different items and all of the stats that you need in order to make a very powerful version of Wing Strikes. If you have any mechanical questions about Wing Strikes or any other aspect of the game, feel free to tag me in the Maxroll community Discord. I am more than happy to help if you can, or help point you in a direction where you can find information if I happen to not know it. I just want to get these videos out there for the basic concepts of it, because the game doesn't do a very good job explaining these new mechanics that are added to the game. So if you guys felt that I missed something, please just write that in the comment section below, and I will just explain it there for everyone else and pin it at the top so that nobody misses it. For now, that's all. I'll see you guys in the next one. Ciao.